In the late 1960s, Northern California was changing fast. The Bay Area was alive with protest, music, counterculture, and possibility. San Francisco had become a symbol of reinvention. Young people came west searching for freedom, identity, escape. But between the quiet roads, lakes, parks, and neighborhoods of that same region, another story was unfolding. A man was killing. And then he started writing. He sent letters to newspapers. He mailed ciphers. He demanded attention. He gave himself a name and a symbol, and for more than 50 years, the world has repeated both. The Zodiac Killer became one of the most infamous unidentified criminals in American history. But beneath the mythology, beneath the codes and suspects and theories, there is a smaller, more devastating truth. 5 people were murdered. 2 survived, and no one has ever been convicted. This is the story of the Zodiac Killer. The first confirmed attack happened on December 20, 1968, on Lake Herman Road near Berryessa, California. David Arthur Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen were teenagers. They were parked in a remote area when they were attacked. Both were shot and killed. At that moment, the case had no famous name. There was no Zodiac yet. No letters, no cipher, no symbol printed in newspapers. Just 2 young people dead on a winter night, and investigators trying to understand why. 7 months later, the violence returned. On July 4, 1969, Darlene Ferrin and Michael Mageau were attacked at Blue Rock Springs Park in Vallejo. Ferrin was killed. Mageau survived. This second attack changed everything. Soon after, letters arrived at Bay Area newspapers. The writer claimed responsibility for both the Blue Rock Springs attack and the Lake Herman Road murders. He included details that gave the letters weight, and he demanded that newspapers publish coded messages. Now, the killer was not only taking lives, he was shaping the story. That is one of the most disturbing things about the Zodiac case. The violence was real, but the public performance around it became part of the crime. The letters turned fear into a shared experience. Anyone who opened the newspaper could feel pulled into the investigation. The killers seemed to understand that. The first major cipher, now often called the 408 cipher, was solved quickly by private citizens. But it did not reveal his name. It revealed a mind interested in control, death, and spectacle. And that became the cruel rhythm of the case. He promised answers. He gave puzzles. He created attention. He withheld himself. Then came Lake Berryessa. On September 27, 1969, Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were attacked near the lake in Napa County. Hartnell survived. Shepard died from her injuries. This attack is one of the most chilling parts of the Zodiac story because of the details later described by the survivor. An offender wearing a hooded costume marked with the Zodiac symbol. It was no longer only a crime. It was a constructed identity. But the costume, the symbol, the letters, all of that can distract from the most important part. Cecilia Shepard lost her life. Brian Hartnell survived an attack that would forever connect him to one of the most scrutinized cases in American crime history. 2 weeks later, the case moved into San Francisco. On October 11, 1969, taxi driver Paul Stine picked up a passenger. He was later shot and killed in the Presidio Heights neighborhood. This murder widened the fear. The earlier attacks had been in more isolated locations, involving couples. Paul Stine was working in the city. He was driving a cab. His death suggested the killer did not need the cover of a lover's lane or a dark park. After Stine's murder, another letter was sent. This time, the writer included a piece of Stine's shirt. That changed the nature of the letters. They were no longer only claims. They carried physical proof connecting the writer to at least one crime. By the end of 1969, the Zodiac case had become something larger than a murder investigation. Police departments were under pressure. Newspapers were part of the story. The public was afraid and fascinated. The killer's words were being read, decoded, debated, and republished. And the Zodiac kept feeding that attention. He sent more letters. He used threats. He claimed more victims than investigators could confirm. He seemed to enjoy the gap between what police knew and what the public feared. That gap is where the Zodiac legend grew. Over time, other cases were pulled into the orbit of the Zodiac story. Some people have tried to connect him to the murder of Cherry Joe Bates in Riverside. Others have discussed the Kathleen Johns incident or the disappearance of Donna Lass. The Zodiac himself claimed responsibility for crimes beyond the 5 confirmed murders. But the confirmed core remains narrow: David Faraday, Betty Lou Jensen. Darlene Ferrin, Cecilia Shepard, Paul Stine, Michael Mageau, and Brian Hartnell survived. That is the center of the case. Everything else belongs to the outer ring of possibility, suspicion, and debate. And then there are the suspects. Few unsolved cases have generated as much public suspect hunting as the Zodiac case. Books, documentaries, message boards, private investigators, and amateur codebreakers have all tried to solve it. Arthur Lee Allen became one of the most discussed names. He was investigated and became central to many retellings, but he was never convicted as the Zodiac Killer. In 2021, a private group claimed that Gary Francis Posty was the Zodiac. Law enforcement did not confirm that claim as a solution. There have been other names, too. Some plausible to certain writers, some weak. Some built on coincidence. Some based on patterns that disappear when examined closely. The problem is that the Zodiac case invites obsession. It has codes. It has letters. It has a symbol. It has a hidden identity. It has possible victims. It has suspects who almost fit. Almost. That word haunts this case. Almost enough evidence. Almost a name. Almost a confession. Almost a solution. In 2020, one of the great mysteries of the case finally shifted. The 340 cipher, mailed in 1969, was solved by David Oranchak, Sam Blake, and Jarl Van Eyck. For decades, people had wondered if that cipher would reveal the Zodiac's identity. It did not. It gave another message, another glimpse into the communication style of the person behind the letters, but not the final answer. And maybe that is why the Zodiac case has lasted so long in the public imagination, because it keeps offering doors. A cipher opens, a suspect appears, a letter is re-examined, a witness statement is debated, a new theory goes public, but every door opens into another hallway. There is no trial transcript where the truth is finally tested, no verdict naming the killer, no sentencing hearing, no final explanation of motive. The Zodiac Killer remains unidentified, and that means the case has to be told with discipline. The Zodiac wanted attention. He wanted his chosen name printed. He wanted the public to repeat his threats and study his puzzles. He wanted to turn murder into a performance. A responsible telling should not give him everything he wanted. It should remember the victims as clearly as the symbol. David Faraday and Betty Lou Jensen were teenagers at the beginning of their lives. Darlene Ferrin was killed while Michael Mageau survived and carried the trauma of that night forward. Cecilia Shepard died after the Lake Berryessa attack, while Brian Hartnell lived to describe what happened. Paul Stine was a taxi driver doing his job when he became the final confirmed murder victim in the Zodiac case. Their names are not clues. They are the reason the case matters. The Zodiac case is often treated like a riddle, and yes, it contains riddles. It contains ciphers. It contains strange letters and a hidden identity. But at its heart, it is not a game. It is a series of murders that left families grieving, survivors changed, and investigators chasing a person who understood the power of fear. More than half a century later, the question remains, who was the Zodiac? The honest answer is still, we do not know.